Stigmatization around mental health still exists. In the last several years, there's been an uptick in shared treatment experiences, specifically for those who were in treatment as an adolescent over the last 30 years. As a consultant working with young adults only, it's been unsettling to hear about the horrific experiences that some folks have described. As someone trained as a counselor, we were taught to do no harm. I lead with this for each client I work with. While recording this special parent series, over the last year, several parents have suggested I interview their young adults. The special parent series is noted as being just that. It's about the parent perspective only. I'm now branching out to launch the former participant series, extending the opportunity for former participants who feel comfortable talking about their journey, doing so on this podcast. No topic is off limits, and not all stories are positive. This series is meant to be honest, transparent, and real for each individual's experience through the treatment continuum. Please note that this special former participant series is the adult's perspective of their treatment experience during adolescence or as a young adult. This is merely one perspective of a single story, and it's important to know that names have been changed for the protection of the interviewee unless they have requested not to do so. These episodes may include details surrounding suicide, self-harm, substance abuse, including overdose, hospitalizations, psychotic episodes, and other traumatic experiences which include parts of the treatment journey. That includes working with consultants, being escorted by a transport company, wilderness therapy, and a residential treatment program. All that is to say, listener discretion is advised. Welcome to an episode with a former participant in treatment.
It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. This podcast was formed to collectively build a bank of stories from normal people sharing their non-linear paths. Unfortunately, social media paints a narrow picture of what success looks like, so I'm doing my best to spread the news that changing course is common, and you don't have to know what you want to do the rest of your life when you're 18. If you're a parent worried about your young adult and whether their path is leading them to success, you're in the right place. I'm a therapeutic consultant who works with young adults to connect them with resources that'll help them get back on that path to success. So if you're curious, let's chat. You can schedule a free consultation through my website. Today, my guest is Dan. Dan details his treatment journey at length and also dives into the winding career path that ensued after he got sober. He's got a great sense of humor, so there'll be no shortage of laughs during this interview. Let's not wait any longer. Here's Dan. Dan, thanks for finally carving out some time. I say finally, like I've been waiting for a while, but in all fairness, I have been chasing you down a little bit to do this. So thank you for finally being available to do this interview.
Totally. Thank you. I've been looking forward to it. Yeah, I feel like it's been like just over a year in the making almost.
I know, kind of hard to believe, right? Where were we? We were in Portland at a conference and talking about this. So, okay, wait, here's our 1 year anniversary from start of the conversation to actual recording.
Totally.
Let's knock it out.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm going to ask some questions, and it'll feel kind of formal initially just to get this kind of kicked off, but I am excited because we've had kind of some bits and spurts conversations about a little bit of your journey. And so I'm excited to actually just kind of hear it all in one fell swoop. So just telling the people that are listening to this, where did you actually grow up? And then how old were you when you ended up going to treatment?
Yeah, so I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, in Naperville specifically. And I was 21 when I actually got sober. This is back in 2008, but I had done, a couple little like IOP outpatient stuff, and then one like 30-day residential before I actually got sober this time. And that was probably when I was like 19-ish.
Okay, so still a young adult, like trying to figure it out. Was a lot of that stuff you're saying like local IOPs, short residential experience, were those also local to the Naperville area, or were you kind of in different places?
Yeah, a couple of the IOPs were actually younger when I was in high school, and then the residential I did it was in another suburb of Chicago.
Okay, so still close, right? Close enough. So I'm just gonna ask you point blank. You answered the question that I asked you. How old were you when you went to treatment? And you answered it with, "Well, let me tell you how old I was when I got sober." So why don't you just tell our listeners, what does that mean, right? Like, what was the change in your journey when you actually, like, all of a sudden it's like this? Now I'm starting my recovery.
So that's a great question. I think it looks different for everybody. I think for me, it finally came down to a place of like just I was in a real bad shape. I had like overdosed and flatlined, had to be intubated, all this stuff. And my family ended up hiring a consultant similar to you. And they were like, they're like, we love you and you can't keep living like this. And if you don't make a change, then we don't want anything to do with you anymore. And then they were like, you're never allowed to live with us again. And you're never allowed to live in Illinois ever again, which I think is funny now because I think that's very much opposite how my mom feels. But yeah, they drew like a really hard and fast boundary, which I think honestly saved my life because I just didn't care at that time. And so that's kind of where it started. It took me a while. I went to a wilderness program out in Utah and I did that for 3 months. And then I got to an aftercare, like a young adult men's aftercare program in Prescott, Arizona after that. And I was in treatment for about a year total. And to get back to your initial question, it took a while for me to buy in. It took a while for me to get like kind of clear headed. And then I wasn't super sold on it. You know what I mean? It was like I was kind of forced into it. But then I'd say probably about 6 months in was like really when there's a number of spiritual experiences along the way. But I think one where I was like, oh, I think I can do this. And so, yeah, so obviously being sober for me looks like, substance free alcohol, any mind altering, drugs, whatever. And that's been my journey so far.
Well, I appreciate you kind of talking about just honestly how like I wasn't sold on the idea being 21. I mean, I feel like, and you probably see this all the time too, with the program that you work with, which we'll get to here in a little bit, but young adults having a conversation of you have to make a decision now that is going to be forever is not palatable. And when you factor in somebody who's using, and usually it's because I think kind of what you were describing, your story is like, I just didn't care, right? Like I was in such a bad place. And when I think about that, it's like your mental health is in the trash can, right? Your self-worth is non-existent. And so you're using those substances to at least try to mask or like, medicate. And now all of a sudden you want me to remove the thing that's making me feel numb, right? Whatever it is that you are actually looking for. And then I have to choose that forever. Like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, totally. That was very much my response for a long time was like, I can't do this. Like, and even if I can, like, I don't want to. And yeah, it was just like kind of a part of the process. And like at some point I had just been sober for, a year or something like that at the time. And I was like, oh, this actually like makes sense. Like this is cool. And a lot of the reason why I honestly stayed sober at the beginning is because I knew that my parents had like invested a lot of money into my treatment. And so I think part of it was like guilt that got me through like that first year. But yeah, then honestly, like the thing that really like kept me was like the group of people that I met and like the friends and the community that surrounded me were all these other people that had been sober for a long time. And I was like, oh, okay, if these guys can do it, like, I think I could do this. And that was like a huge, shift for me as well, is like building that community.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about a lot of things that are standing out, right? Sense of community or connection, like being able to look up to other people that you can actually, almost like mentors, right? And we're not even talking about sponsors. We're just talking about other people that are in the recovery community. And you're like, oh, if they did it, like this is somebody I can look up to, which oftentimes when I'm working with a young adult that is struggling, there seems to be a disconnect, like a lack of mentorship, just like really like adrift. And so being connected to a community of people that are also having just sober fun, I think that also makes a difference. And I love how you said too that it really kind of clicked when you had a spiritual kind of moment, right? Or some sort of awakening. And I do know that that's a big part of any type of recovery program that somebody is working. When I say program, AA, NA, like you name it, there's got to be some level of spirituality, right? Higher powers, something other than your sense of self. So I don't know if is it too personal if I ask you what your spiritual situation or experience was?
Totally. No. So I've had, yeah, like I said, a couple. I think that one was, I was working with a sponsor at the time, and I had been, going through the steps and like also like writing down different goals and like things that I wanted in my life. And this was kind of a unique thing. You know what I mean? Like I'd done some goals and stuff like that previously, but I just never understood how like you get into a career. Like it sounds very easy. It's like, if you want to be a doctor, you go to school and it's like you do XYZ and you get the degree, and I've always had a hard time with that type of stuff. And so I remember I'm like writing down these goals and I'm like, I think this is like my first job working in treatment where I get accepted, I'm doing it, and I'm like sitting there and I remember I'm at this, like I'm working a weekend overnight shift. And it just like dawns on me. I go through a round and I come back and I sit down and I was like, wow, this is what I've been like kind of working for. And it's funny to think about it now because it was, an overnight shift and everybody's sleeping and I'm not really doing too much. But it was like, oh, this is cool. Like I'm doing something I feel like passionate about. And that was like, yeah, the start to working in this industry. And it just like was this light bulb moment where it was like, oh, if I do the footwork and I keep showing up and like doing the next right thing, then things are going to work out. And it was like, yeah, it was that moment where I was like, ah,
Well, and so thank you for sharing that. Now
yeah,
my head immediately goes to, okay, now let's segue to talking about this career path and journey that you've been on personally and professionally, because it has kind of converged and then it's also diverged. And that's what I like about you is you've got some pretty interesting lived experiences that kind of put you in the position where you are. And speaking of us meeting last year, really for the first time, I was just really intrigued with kind of your path. So why don't you actually, if you're okay, we might come back and ask more questions related to treatment experience, but let's just like go the course of tell us a little bit, after this first job in treatment, where did your career lead you?
totally. So it started out, yeah, working the overnight shifts on the weekends at this place in Prescott, and then I decided that I wanted to go back and work in wilderness, which was a very unique thing because I think I could count on one hand the amount of times that I'd gone camping in my life before agreeing to go to a wilderness program to get sober, and probably two of those times were in my parents' backyard. So wasn't a big outdoorsy guy, but really had this positive experience. And so I got connected with a wilderness program in Bend, Oregon, where I live now. I was a field staff for like 2.5 years. And then I did like logistics for them for another like 2.5 years with a brief, I left when I kind of switched and went to work at like a different residential program out in a different town in Oregon for about 6 months. And yeah, had then, came back, was finishing up my 2.5 years of doing logistics and had maxed out where I could really go in the company and didn't know what I wanted to do. Thought about maybe going back to school to be a therapist, but was like, I don't know if that would pencil out. And so then I was just like, somebody suggested real estate, which is like a huge kind of left turn. But I was like, okay, this seems like, not a huge investment up front and it could be interesting. And so I did that for about 8 years. And it's funny, I work for Skyline Recovery now and I help them buy all the houses when they like were first opening back in like 2017, 2018. And yeah, so I'd been peripherally involved in the company that I work for now. But yeah, so I was doing real estate, was loving it for like the first several years. And then once COVID hit, it was like very chaotic. And I started to feel like I was missing out on like working with people in what felt like a more impactful way. was like, obviously I was working with people in real estate, but it's just different than working in treatment. And like so many people had been like kind of put into my life and had like worked with me and like guided me. I was not an easy case. I mean, I know we didn't really touch on it, but like I was a pain in the ass. And people loved me like when I was not capable of loving myself. And like I had this moment where I called one of my friends and I was like, I think I want to get back into like working with people. I want to go back into working in treatment. And he told me he had done some business development in the past and was like, I think you'd be good at this. This might be something to check out. And so I got into business development, working in the treatment field and connecting families and people that are struggling with mental health and substance abuse, connecting them with treatment.
And that's what you do now. Like you said, full circle, Skyline Recovery in Bend. You're one of the initial touch points, not that you haven't known the owners much longer, but was actually helping them purchase their properties to expand their business, which is, again, I think serendipity is the way that I would describe kind of some of these moments or experiences that you've had leading to where you are now, which is kind of cool to hear.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this question because I don't ask all of the guests that I have, so lucky you. But just like having heard your journey, obviously we started this, you right out the gate just being like, look, I was a former treatment participant. Like, here's a part of my journey, what was going on before I got there. And we're not even the tip of the iceberg. We're literally like the air that exists above the tip in terms of what it is, like level of detail that you're sharing based on your experience. And so, I mean, obviously my hope is that folks will be interested in connecting with you and just from a place of curiosity and admiration, ask more, right? Like, Dan, I want to know more about your story. So that said, you've also talked a lot about your kind of path professionally and personally getting to where you are. So I'm just curious if you view yourself as successful now.
Wow, that's a great question. I think it's kind of an ever-changing answer. I feel very passionate about what I do for work now, and it also doesn't feel like I'm working all the time. Like I get to talk to people and I get to do all of these things. And I think I would say that it feels even hard to say that I feel like I'm successful in some ways, which is an interesting feeling that I'm noticing. Yeah, I think that I'm successful, and I think that I still have a lot of goals and things that I would like to achieve. And so I think like I was kind of saying, it's a moving target, I feel like very grateful for all the opportunities that I've been presented with and all the people that I've like connected with over the years that have like kind of led me in this, along this path to get to where I am today. And I don't think I could have done that if I didn't have all of those people. So I would also, I feel like I can't take credit for all of this success. I feel like it's a team effort for sure.
Well, and like you alluded to earlier, like you were a challenge earlier. Yeah. And so it sounds like it has truly taken a village of people, like, your family, just point of contacts, right, from different points in your life to help you get to where you are. And I appreciate that you acknowledge like that it's hard to say, yes, I'm successful and there's more to this. This doesn't mean like it's the end of the road for me, because I think it's similar to field staff length of stay, right? 2.5 years, that's a long time to be a field staff. Working in business development is not for the faint of heart. And so like, it's definitely something that people do for a certain amount of time, but then you're constantly asking that next question of like, what comes next? If there is a what's next. And I do love that you said that it doesn't feel like work, because that's when it's a great, like it's a good fit, not for the effort, but just for the personality and the experience. Totally. And I will say again, just to belabor that point, somebody as a consultant that is speaking to a lot of business development professionals all the time, you make it seem very effortless in your conversations, like your relatability, you are very approachable, and I just appreciate your sense of humor.
Oh, thank you.
People can't see
Be
this,
out there
but in case,
sometimes.
well, yes, and you rein it in, right? We're on a podcast. You're like, I'm not gonna say anything too egregious right in this moment. But for the folks that can't see him, I'm gonna make sure that your headshot for the sound clip is like fresh with that mustache, because he is rocking it hard right now.
Oh boy, yeah. And it is way more of a conversation starter than I ever would have imagined, if we're just gonna touch on the mustache real quick, which is hilarious. Because 37 years, never had any facial hair.
Okay,
So
well,
this is really switching it up.
I mean, I don't actually know your family history. Is there like any Italian relation? I just feel like you kind of have some like mob vibes.
I wish. I don't know. I don't think we've got like any Italian in us. It's like a lot of like French Canadian and like some Irish probably, because my last name is O'Gorman. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think there's any Italian in there, interestingly. So
okay, well, we'll make sure we'll leave it up for debate for anybody that's actually gonna like look at the picture that I put with the soundbite for this. Like, I'll put it in the comments. What do you think? Does he look like somebody that could have been affiliated with the mafia or the mob? I don't know. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. This conversation just like went down the tubes real quick just because we started talking about mustache.
I know. It happens. It happens quick.
Okay, I'm going to try to rein it back in. Because you work with Skyline, let's give a quick little plug. Who is actually an appropriate Skyline client? Because this answer will actually segue to the question that I'm thinking as a follow-up for you.
Totally, yeah. So Skyline Recovery is based in Bend, Oregon. We're a young adult men's, like 18 to 35-year-old transitional living program. The thing that's kind of unique about us is we are like owner operated, and we're a pretty small program. We have 19 beds, and we're cash pay. We're on the cash pay model. That could be potentially changing in the future, but that's where it stands right now. And it like really, the whole idea and goal behind Skyline was like transitioning these guys back into the community and get them to be active participants, get their lives back on track, get them working towards goals. And so, when they come in, they get a therapist, they get a coach. We go on quarterly, like larger adventures, weekly adventures, there's daily groups, kind of the whole nine. And yeah, we have 3 houses, 2 primary and then 1 step down. Like I said, 19 beds in total. Yeah, it's a really like wraparound service, and it's very individualized for the client. We work with guys that struggle with substance abuse and mental health, like it's dual diagnosis. But I'd say the thing that really kind of like ties everybody together is there is some like substance use or abuse in their past, or some type of like process addiction type of stuff. Yeah, it's trauma and attachment focused. We have a pretty strong, robust clinical team, which I'm pretty proud of. I think these guys do really great work.
Yeah, you guys do for sure. Okay, so hearing this information, it kind of it's full circle, right? Now we're going back to Dan circa 19 or 21 years old, right? Like still trying to figure it out, which feels like, that could hypothetically have been a Skyline guy. And so my question is, after hearing some of the things that you've kind of peppered in throughout this conversation about reflections on your experience or advice or what worked, what would you say to your younger self, like, 19, 21, whatever you think, about how you are today, like who you are today? What would you tell your younger self?
Interesting. Well, I think I would say to trust the process and to surround yourself with people that are like doing the same things that I was looking for, and like, kind of had achieved some of the goals that I was looking to achieve, like to hang around those people and be open to advice and be open to suggestion. I think that's the one thing. I mean, yeah, I've been sober for a long time now, but I've definitely hit different like bumps in the road and, had ups and had downs, and have always continued to be like open to different suggestions. Like it might not take it right away, and it might, like, I'm stubborn. I like to When I feel down, I'm like, let's feel real down, like I can, or like when I'm up, I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. Let's ride it. But just remaining open to what's out there. Like, I don't know what's best for me oftentimes. That's what I've kind of come to learn, I think, throughout this process is I put my trust in the people that surround me, and I really, listen to the things that they say. And I put a lot of stock in their thoughts and their ideas, because I think that everybody has a different perspective, and that's super beneficial.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on to like being a guest, not just being a guest on the podcast, but actually specifically showing up for the former program participant series, because we get a little bit more into the weeds on what was it like to be in treatment, why you went to treatment. And so I just appreciate the willingness to show up for that level of being a guest and kind of airing out that part of your young adult journey. And I know that there are parents and there are young adults listening to this that are really going to resonate with some of the things that you talked about. And I do hope that they feel comfortable reaching out to you or Skyline, right? Like, we'll make sure that we have Dan's contact in the show notes to reach out to him directly, whether they're curious about Skyline or just you personally in your journey. So I cannot thank you enough for showing up, being a guest, and just for being you. Yeah,
of course. Thank you. Yeah, obviously this wouldn't happen without you. So I appreciate you and all the interactions that we've had so far. And it's been great. And I'm looking forward to running this half marathon with you before too long.
Oh God, please don't lose the mustache before the race.
Oh, it'll be there. I promise. It'll be there.
Cool. All right, perfect. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guest for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.